Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Costello, and I'm here once more with my friend and colleague, Leo Farberg, over there
Hey,
in Ireland. So, what we're going to talk about today? Today, we're going to talk about comparison. We're going to talk about comparison being the thief of joy. You may have heard that phrase, that little saying. It's quite famous. Often it's attributed to Theodore Roosevelt, but it might not have been him. So if you really want to know, do some Googling. You'll find out that way, I'm sure. But what we're talking about is the psychology of how we as human beings process things like self-worth and satisfaction. So let's have a think about the reasons why we can diminish our joy or diminish our self-worth. What sort of things kick off to make us do that? So if we're focused internally, we're having a good look at ourselves, we're not really comparing to anything else, that can be quite a good thing. That can be very positive. A little bit of comparison with the outside world might help too. But if we become too external, too focused on external benchmarks of success, for example, so things like how successful somebody is, how wealthy they appear to be, their appearance, look at their jacket, look at that shirt, look at that dress, whatever they happen to be wearing. Oh, it's Gucci. I don't have any Gucci, that sort of thing. So it comes down to things like that as well, which kind of sounds a little bit funny, but too much comparison really can mess us up. And it can rob our joy. It can rob our sense of fulfillment. It can lead us to creating unrealistic standards that don't work for us because they're just copied from other people. We're all different, remember. Our values can be ignored almost. If you think about it, we've all got a pretty important set of values. But if you're busy comparing yourself to somebody else, maybe your values are getting pushed to the back. And that's going to hurt as well long term. So what do you think, Leo? There's a lot more we can say about this, and we don't have all day. So
I should say one thing is that it's a pandemic right now in the world that looking for external clues of success or what's good, what's bad, and at the same time, it's something which is actually part of our programming and not just in the sense of software, what we get from our parents or other people around us, but and social media now and internet, but also it's just because people are intrinsically social beings, and we've got that hardware that also uh, has this function to look who's around us and whether they like us or not, how we match to the society. And but people were I every time I explain people about people, I say people were not destined to live like we live. They were destined to live. They were kind of created to live in small groups, uh, supporting each other. Yes, fighting once in a while. Yes, fighting some external troubles and threats. But at the same time, there wouldn't be such a variety of external clues. There would be one culture, one system within this tribe or whatever, a big family or something. And so that's why the hardware was created for these circumstances, but not for like seeing the whole world in front of you and all the riches that uh, appeared and all the standards of beauty that are created and imposed upon us. And so and and we're all so madly uh, influenced and by external clues and cues and everything, you know, everything's shiny, everything's attractive, all so many sources of information. It's bombarding us. and we're not left with any opportunity, and we are never taught to go inside and listen to ourselves, what you really want, how you really feel. And so there's no surprise that people are so ruined, because it's actually natural, but at the same time broken right now, and needs a lot of attention to get it back on track.
Yeah. It's so one of the things we're doing within what you just said is it's kind of, I was thinking about gratitude. If we're comparing, so we're spending all this time looking out, comparing, looking to the external. One of the things we're doing is losing sight of what we already have. All of us have got some amazing stuff in there. So looking outside, we lose sight of that. It's almost as though we put a blanket over it. We forget about our superpowers. We've all got superpowers. So I think that's quite interesting. But the other thing as well, if we're pushing ourselves to align with society standards, peer standards, Instagram creator standards, and I've got a funny story about that in a minute. So if we're trying to align ourselves with all of that stuff, what does it do? It erodes our identity. Think about it like that. It really does. It erodes our identity. What do you think, Leo?
Oh, it's probably the one of the central questions in not just psychology as a practice, but in philosophy, like who you are as a person, what your real values are. And the funny thing in working as a practical psychologist, I very often find out that people don't even uh, and it's not about saying about the client, it's just everyone. Me too. I'm also prone to comparing myself to others and thinking that I'm not good enough. But it's, listening to you, starting with the body. We are not, we don't go to the toilet because we want to. We go to the toilet because we have a break. We eat not because we are hungry. We eat because it's lunchtime, or we are bored because we don't hear our own, we don't sense our own sensations, how we feel. And so, if and then it goes to, do you like, what's the idea of comfort? What's the idea of beauty? And what I think, because that's basically where I start every time. How it is, okay, it's all good. A villa in Florida, it's good. Like this great car, yeah, it's a good car. Or this type of relationship somewhere in somebody's Instagram looks good. But there is another popular saying around internet, not just about that one you mentioned, but it's like you are comparing their their outside with your
With
inside,
your
and inside
that's
you feel not always good. Again, people are prone to feel bad more than feeling good, because basically, again, they were programmed to scan for threats and escape threats. They were programmed to live in a natural world. In pleasure would be something, or like any type of pleasure, would be something of a rare kind. If you find good berries, if you find some honey, if the hunt was good, if everybody's warm and more or less healthy, and that's kind of okay. Now we're out of threat, but whether it's pleasure or not, and do we have to put some extra attention to positive emotions, to seeing the positives, to train ourselves to be not only in the anxious part of the brain, but also in other parts of the brain that perceive the world as whole, that perceive ourselves as uh, basically good and enough. And we do need more attention towards it and train. It's trained as a muscle.
yeah. Here's a little exercise that is actually, I did it, and it's kind of fun, but also very annoying. But it's worthwhile. And it relates to cognitive biases. So when we are comparing ourselves to others, we tend to compare upwards, so
Yeah,
uh, in other words, to people we see or perceive as better off than us or better at something than us or whatever it is. But we tend to go up. And what that does is that it magnifies any feelings of inadequacy we might already have. So, well, I don't feel great at that, and look how good he is at that, and suddenly we feel even more inadequate. And that is damaging, obviously.
absolutely.
And then on the other side, we rarely, if ever, compare in a downward way. So think about it. How often do we compare downward? How often do we reflect on people who might actually envy certain aspects of us or our life? That's quite an interesting thought. It's kind of one of those weird paradoxes, I guess. So the exercise is look for those downward comparisons. So when you feel yourself comparing yourself up in an upward direction, stop and pause and think, how can I do it the other way around? Compare myself to somebody else in a downward way. It sounds complicated, but it's not. But all of us compare naturally upwards. Now, there's a million reasons for that we can't go into today. So that's one thing to try. Another one to counteract comparison, practice gratitude. Now, that's said, oh, good grief. It's said every day, all over the internet, all over social media, practice gratitude, practice gratitude. It starts to give you a headache because you're hearing it all the time, perhaps too much sometimes. But if we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, that is extremely empowering. So think about it. What do you have? Think about what you have. Think about as I like to call them, my superpowers. Now, what are your superpowers? What have you got? Don't worry about the other stuff for now. Just focus on the strong stuff. It's quite interesting. In relation to your goals, here's a question. Are your goals and all your efforts around those goals aligned with your values, or are they aligned with some kind of external marker, external metrics? So think about it. We need to look at our values. We need to look at us first. Okay, sometimes we've got to align ourselves with external things. But if we're only doing that, that's not helpful. So we need to think about personal goals in that way. It's easy to say limit social media use. Dead easy. So don't go on Instagram. That doesn't work, especially for these people who call themselves creators. They've got to go on Instagram. Because if they don't get paid and nobody advertises and all that sort of things. But what we can do what we can limit is exposure to idealized portrayals of other people's lives. When I see one of these idealized things coming up, I often do just say, oh no, and swipe and it's gone. But that's me. I find it quite easy to do that. Other people may not. So I have this funny story to tell you. There's a woman who is a lawyer by profession. That's what she does. But she's also a social media influencer. And when you see her on social media, she's always well dressed, incredibly well dressed. She's often you might see a still picture of her with a glass of champagne in her hand, celebrating, partying, really big, wow, that sort of thing. You wouldn't for a minute guess that this woman is a very successful lawyer either. So what is she portraying? I don't know. But think about it. The image that you're seeing is not the image of the woman who's the lawyer. Which is quite interesting. So how do we see things on social media? We need to think about those things, and we need to be kind to ourselves. Sometimes that's really hard work, but we do. We need to be kind to ourselves, and more so when we feel inadequate, when we've been comparing ourselves to other people. There's no point. What's the value in beating ourselves up? So, have you got any ideas, Leo? Any tips?
I agree with what you say, and the thing is that when things like practice gratitude are all over the place, like everyone's repeating it, it gets devaluated. It gets, you know, not. The thing is, it's not writing gratitude list. Gratitude is actually even not a feeling, it's a sensation. It's how you feel. It's your body, your brain gives those chemicals, and your body feels like opening and blooming and kind of expanding. And that's the most gratifying thing. It's not just a list of 100 things or people. It makes you bored and annoyed. But just a little thank you uh, at checkout might be said with a feeling of gratitude, and that will be some positive emotion, which is actually a sensation in your body that gratifies, that incentivizes you to feel this way more often. And so, if you let yourself uh, feel these little sparks, these little bouts of a heightened emotion during the day, like, okay, this is done, this is finished. And people again in coaching and in on social media, they would use, to me, they sound two words are too strong of connotation. Like, let's celebrate it. There's nothing to celebrate. I just finished a post or I just finished some part of work. It's not about celebrating. It's about noting that you're done, you're finished, and you're satisfied, getting this sense of satisfaction, little satisfaction. But if you do it often during the day, like titration, like doctors would say, with inserting little medication, it's your own hormones, it's your own neuromediators that are actually a medication for feeling better. And it's not just an external pill. And so when you, that's one thing that I wanted to say, that it's not about pumping up the emotion and comparing to what you've done. It's probably not worth it. But again, little doses, but during the day, all day, systematically, that will bring your moods up and your self-evaluation. And another thing is when you get annoyed or triggered, if you feel down when you look at somebody's picture on Instagram, if you feel like you're not enough, probably an idea of getting a good mentor, getting a good counselor, not necessarily you have to be in trouble, but a lot of work with the counselors and mentors is about self-analyzing. Okay, now let's see, because emotions, when you feel down, they are also uh, they are signs. They are like they are signals. What's going on? And okay, I watched this picture and I feel bad. Okay, let's see why. What triggered you? Where did you lose your like basis? Where did you lose your self-esteem? And when you analyze it and don't just go into bad emotion or try to suppress it and try not to notice, it will bring you more understanding of yourself. And actually, if you see that you're reacting to uh, somebody's achievements or ways how they look, and you do need to think about your values, because everything's good. It's good to be rich. It's good to be kind of good looking. It's good to achieve something. It's good, but you have to tailor it to your own personality, to your to your size. If you buy a beautiful Gucci dress and it doesn't fit you, what the point? That's so is with values and those goals. You have to fit it to yourself to make your own plan or pace, because you can really fancy like a beautiful villa, as I mentioned, because I had a client, a young, basically boy, 20-year-old, who kind of fancied uh, a villa in Florida. Have you been to Florida? Why Florida? Why 2 million? Why not five? It's like, and because he got it from some YouTube video, and
Yeah.
now he's there and
Yeah.
completely unhappy with his own fate, though he's from good family, getting his education, not happy, you know. And it's again, it's
Absolutely.
a pandemic, and so it's reevaluating and resizing, uh, because the all those extra cues are, and this idea of comparing yourself kind of upward, that someone's better than you, uh, should be probably should be taken as that something that you can orient to, something that you can that you can compare, not yourself to that, but your values. Okay, is it good for me? Does it work for me? Maybe it's not a villa in Florida. Maybe it's a nice house somewhere, in like Pyrenees,
Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
in a northern country,
Yeah.
somewhere in,
So
Scandinavia, where snow.
a couple of, yes, snow would be good. There's as I said earlier, there's a
was
distinct lack of around here right now. But still, one of the things that has been coming out from what you've been saying, Leon, we need to finish in a moment, is relating to psychologist Barbara
Yeah,
Friedrichsen.
because
She talked about tiny engines of positivity. So what she meant was a little thing happens that's positive. But you notice it, you go, yeah, that's cool. So it kind of builds this little tiny engine. Now, if you don't have anything else great and cool happening for the next 12 hours, that tiny engine is just going to disappear and it won't be an engine anymore. But if you notice all these positive things that are happening in your world and they become tiny engines, and that tiny engine gets built upon by another engine and it grows and it grows and it grows. So we have this thing called tiny engines of positivity. So that's worth some thinking about. If you want to study it, Barbara Friedrichsen, she talks a lot about that stuff. But one of the other things Leo's been talking about is thematic awareness. So thematic awareness is probably something we can talk about next week because it's a big one. But it's certainly worth considering.
exactly a very important thing to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do that next time. Right, that's enough for us for
Okay.
today. Gotta go. Take care.
Yeah,
Really soon.
yeah. See you. See you next time.